Welcome to season 4, episode.
Woohoo! Season 4, we made it.
You heard that correctly. We have been around for 3 seasons. And we are so happy to have Mary Collins of 2 amazing companies joining us, Blue Fern Travel and Far Horizons. Can't wait to talk more about that. I'm Lori Timoney, and I'm with Go City, and I'd like to have my esteemed co-host introduce themselves. So, Bruce, why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Lori. Hey, Mary. Looking forward to the conversation. Bruce Rosard here, one of the co-founders of Arrival. Actually met Mary for the first time, I'm pretty sure, at our executive summit in DC, face-to-face, although
first time
we met some Blue Fern people when we were doing our site visit of DC a few years back, of deciding if that where we should go. And that's when I first heard of Blue Fern. But at the time, I was not familiar with Far Horizons. So it would be great to talk about both. Yeah.
Awesome.
Christian.
Yeah, Christian, Magpie Travel. That's all. Looking forward to this. So let's get on with it. Nice to meet you, Mary.
Nice to meet you. Yay.
So, Mary, maybe you can just introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do.
Yep. So my name is Mary Collins. I own 2 different travel companies. One is Blue Fern Travel. We do DC-based food tours, afternoon 3-hour-long food tours, and we've been in the DC area for about 11 years now. And our other company, I acquired it in 2022. It's called Far Horizons, and it's a multi-day international archaeology-focused tour company. So very excited to be here, guys.
There's so much that we could talk about. Hopefully we'll get some of the good stuff. But one thing I would love to start with is Far Horizons. So from what I recall, this business started somewhere around 1982, 40 years old before, so it had 40 years and then you jumped into it.
That's right.
And I mean, tell us a little bit about that, because clearly, you got somebody who started a business in 1982 and then things have changed a lot since then. So what did you find when you took it on?
That's right. Well, so the original owner, that's who we purchased it from. Like you said, she founded it in 1982. She is a woman, as you can tell, and built it all the way through to 2022. She built out about 60 different tour routes that are in all different parts of the world, obviously focused on archaeology. In the nicest way, I'd like to say what I found, what I lovingly call is a 40-year-old startup, because basically, as you can imagine, she was 40 when she started, so she retired at the age of 80, which you can also think maybe what her tech abilities were, or just more maybe importantly how tech has changed so much, especially more and more rapidly the farther we go. And so we've just had a lot of updates that we've had to make, which kind of, I'd say, almost work out well for us, because we can keep kind of the front end, the front facing, customer facing things the same, the tours, the scholars that we use, things like that, and really just update a lot of the back end and kind of keep things a lot more efficient. So just as a really clear example of what we walked into, they actually did not in 2022 take online payments. So that was one of the first things that we got to update. They were literally sending PDFs off and then printing them and writing down credit card numbers on pieces of paper and putting them back in the mail. So that was clearly like the first thing to fix. And then we went to the website, and now we're almost done with the CRM update, and just marketing and all kinds of things that have had to get updated since. So we've been very busy.
Really refreshing.
Say it again.
I said what I think would be really refreshing for Experience.This, and especially with this being show 1 of a new season, we could have a whole conversation today with Mary and not even mention, I'll mention it once, AI, right?
Oh, no, we have to, Bruce.
We're going to have to.
Mary's got this great thing to say about it.
It was a good try, though.
Okay, that's fine. But the core of what you do is all about the people, about your guides, about your 60 plus itineraries that were done by humans.
Yes.
I was only kind of half joking.
Much pre-technology was in operation. I think of this, the founder, her name's Mary Del Lucas. I think of her as kind of a force of nature to be able to have done all this, mostly pre-internet. And again, just as women, it's been a long road. So I'm just very impressed.
Was that always a big part of it? Was women founded? I mean, that was always kind of a core thing.
Honestly, I don't think it was that big for her. And, it's not that big for me either. We just both happen to be women.
Just happen to be women. And you're entrepreneurs and running.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Is it still 60 itineraries for the multi-day?
We've added a few. We've probably added 3 or 4 since then. And typically we only offer about 30 every year. So, we kind of rotate through and see what the demand is looking like. And, some of them we put back up year over year, and some, kind of swap in and out, things like that. So, yeah.
So you're using archaeologists, scholars, I guess is what, essentially.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of every single one of your tours has a scholar associated with it.
Correct.
That travels with the group the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that's definitely one of our differentiators. Our group size is limited to 14. So all the folks get to interact with the scholar just very intimately the whole time. And I think a lot of the educational tours out there, they'll do like the dinner lectures, things like that. You'll go see the sites and then you'll come back and hear from the scholar. But our scholars are actually with the guests like the entire time. They walk through the sites with them. They point out things. They give handouts. They show the maps and just everything. And it's just super intimate. And I think that way too, they almost have like an ongoing conversation for those 2 weeks. So they can kind of ask a question and come back to it later at a different site with more context and things like that, and just get really, really in depth with whatever topic they're focused on at the time. So,
Mary, is it a model that's similar to what We Road is doing, where you have your scholar, but there's also more of a tour, not a guide, but the tour person who kind of really is focused on those 14 people and the logistics, or is the scholar also doing the logistics?
No, that's a great question. I'd say we're pretty heavily staffed. So we have the scholar focus. We kind of call the scholar like the star of the show, and they focus on the content specifically. And then we also have a local guide that we bring on, and we vet those folks very carefully and make sure that they're also very well versed in the archaeology sites in the region. And then we also have a tour manager. And so most recently I went on the Tunisia trip and I was the tour manager. And so whoever that role is gets to focus on the logistics or allergies or rooms and all those types of things. We do not want our scholar to be
right. Okay.
Worried.
Just want to clarify that. So the tour manager is there the whole time.
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're definitely in that niche category, but also as well, I guess, kind of in the luxury category. Mm-hmm. And that's something that we've been hearing about, talking about in this space for such a while now, is that luxury is just a growing category. And so what do you see, when we were talking the other day, you had sort of a different approach to like what is luxury, just price, because obviously your price is higher than most other tours. But what else makes a trip kind of a luxury experience in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us specifically, because we use the scholars, a lot of times those folks have literally dug at least one of the sites in the region that we're at, which also means they know their friends down the road at the next site and the next site. And so we're actually able to get a lot of private access. I've been on some tours where we were able to go in literally the back rooms of the museums and see the artifacts that they can't really put out because they're too delicate. Things like that. And so I think just that super exclusive experience, for one thing, definitely adds to the luxury in my mind that people are looking for. I mean, some people, of course, count luxury as the 5-star hotels and those all the human comforts, creature comfort type things. But then, of course, I think just the accessibility and the exclusiveness of the experience. I think for us, that's kind of where we land as far as what luxury looks like.
You're not staying in 5-star hotels.
We do when we can, but we're also going to pretty off the beaten path places where quite literally there are not those options. And so our guests are well aware of that, and they're avid travelers. Many of them have been to some of these places already and are coming back with us because they can see it in more detail and in more depth and things like that. So
what about community? I mean, are the scholars helping you to bring in business, or why don't you talk a little bit about how you fill the trips?
Sure. They do help sometimes. I mean, a lot of times we'll have some scholars that have just a big following in our cohort of folks. And so they'll kind of come back year over year for that scholar and kind of follow them around. And then, I know like for our Japan trip last year, our scholar just happened to have a bunch of friends that wanted to go. And so all of a sudden, half the trip was full with people he knew or people that knew of him through their friends. We do have an 85% return rate. So that is a big way that we refill our trips year over year. And then, I mean, we're kind of always looking for new ways to get in front of the right people as well, which is part of that 40-year-old startup mentality, is trying to figure out how do we create these distribution networks and where do we look for those and where do we find people online and, things like that. So
Who are your customers? Is it sort of random rich people, or is it experts? Are they Roman experts that go into a new site that want to get really detailed, or is it a mix of all the above? Or
I'd say it's a mix. They're probably more like psychographic aligned. So just very deep learners. We tend to send out, again, the scholar helps us, but we'll build out reading lists. And these are like 20 some books, and they're very dense books. It's not like high level things. It's like, this one site and here's 100 pages or 200 pages on this one site. And they show up and they have read almost all of them and will come with questions. And I mean, these are people that just love to learn, and the more, the better, and the deeper, the better. And so I think that's probably the like common thread throughout all of them. Some of them will have read all the books and then they come on the trip. Some of them kind of take the trip as like their starting point to look into an area. And then so they'll go read all the things afterwards. But either way, they kind of almost see it as like a course in its own right. So.
Mhm.
Do you have challenges with, I mean, when I was on your site and I looked at the pricing, I was like, okay, yeah, definitely on the higher end of things. So
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be an issue then. You're not getting pushback from people about the pricing. It's just like, yep, I want to sign up. And I mean, what's your competition look like?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say occasionally we get pushback. I'd say to me, our competition, if you're thinking about bigger players, would be like a Smithsonian tour or like some of the alumni tours that different universities offer. Or there's a group called Archaeology Institute of America, AIA. They offer tours. And a lot of times they are less expensive than ours. But also, if you look in the details, their small group is like 30 to 40 people. So I think there's a significant trade-off in the quality or the intimacy of that group and what that's going to really look like. And so when people ask us, I mean, that specifically is definitely something I would point to, or just the fact that, like I mentioned, the scholar will be with them the whole time. And most of the time that kind of just makes sense to folks. And, either they can afford it or they can't. But, obviously we're trying to find the people that really want to go and want it for the right reasons. And honestly, they do become friends on the trips too, because they have such deep shared interests that they'll kind of end up traveling with each other after the fact. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the things I was thinking about is just talking about kind of your tech approach. So you inherited this, kind of 40-year-old company, or not inherited, I guess you probably bought it, but and so when you thought about, what do I do? Like you talked about obviously taking payment right online, but what else? Like, we've got obviously we're talking to a lot more multi-day now. Tech is one of the big challenges, is just, needing better tech and actually kind of bringing themselves into kind of this century, so to speak, because a lot of multi-day we're still operating maybe in a different fashion than some of the kind of day tour companies. So how did you consider it when you first came in and you said, okay, what do I need to do here? What was your process?
I mean, I think I looked at like the whole, like kind of the big picture, the whole thing. Like personally, I guess step one was just to kind of come in and observe. I'm not somebody that's just going to come in and start saying things. I want to see what's really happening and what's working and where the real pain points are. So there was definitely like, a few months of just that type of thing. But then I think just kind of looking at it from a high level and a little bit seeing where are those pain points, what are the efficiencies we can gain, and how can they kind of work together. Like one thing we're excited about is like a customer portal, because we do have such a return rate that once they put their info in the portal, maybe then they don't have to re-enter it every time that they're going to come back, and just things like that, and how they can kind of work together to help our team be more efficient, but also benefit the customer. And then a little bit, it's kind of the art of the possible. I feel like I kind of meant, whether I did the research and saw there were customer portals, or whether I just kind of dreamed one up and then kind of went and looked for it. But just, found those things out there. Right now we're using WeTravel, which we're huge fans of. So I'll just plug them. I feel like I should be one of their ambassadors, honestly. But they're doing a great job adding a lot of new features to their software that, it's kind of like things that I had dreamed up a few years ago. And then all of a sudden they're kind of just putting it out there and saying, here's an app, here's a portal, here's this.
What are some of your favorite things? What are the things you think are most impactful for you?
I'm sure this isn't new for a lot of operators, but for us, given the tech state we were in, an app was a really big deal. And so right now they offer an app that you can upload all your trips, and then your guests can see the itinerary as they go, and they can kind of, flip through day by day and see where they're going to be and what the hotel is and things like that. And that wasn't something we could do 2 years ago. So I'm sure other people were already well on their way of doing that. But for us,
can they interact on that? Is that like an Airbnb future?
Not yet. That's something I mentioned to them, though, that I would really appreciate if they could so they would make their own little WhatsApp group, and then they'd kind of chat through there. And, but if it all gets integrated, I think that would be really, really cool.
Yeah, I like the concept of the community part behind especially the multi-day stuff. It's the stuff Brian Chesky talks about. I don't think I don't know if he's got a proper plan or not, but I do like the concept of that, whether it works or not. But maybe someone like WeTravel.
What do you mean, Christian? I think what you're saying is really important, but I'm not clear on what it.
Well, I don't know if you saw the announcement, like the Airbnb announcement last year, right, with the whole community thing. Chesky still thinks he's building like a P2P community, right? I don't think he understands what they do sometimes, but
right.
And he talks about, you're gonna meet all the rest of the group before you go on the walking tour of San Francisco, and you're gonna chat during it, and then you're gonna have dinner afterwards, and then you're gonna meet up next year when you go to Rome. And he thinks it's all,
which is we know that's bullshit. Versus you go on one of Mary's tours and you're with 14 people for 10 days, right? And you really get to know those people. And you really have a community. And if it's an 80% return rate, you're going to see them at a different archaeological spot the next year, et cetera.
That's exactly right.
No, but you're being a bit rude against you can have a day trip. I mean, some day trips are like, you go to Yosemite, it's like 15 hours long, right? You can go on a walking tour for 2 hours and make friends with people, and then have dinner with them right afterwards, and they could become equally good friends. So it's the same concept. You don't have to spend 12 days with someone to become friends with them.
I mean, we've seen that on our food tours, that people will go get drinks afterwards that they just met and things like that. So it definitely happens.
How do you think about building community? Because obviously you have that kind of, like you said, the built in, but when I think about somebody like a We Road, for instance, they obviously have a whole different way of going about building community and keeping people engaged with each other. So have you given any thought to extending kind of the opportunity that you have right now and maybe even developing a bigger community?
We definitely have. I will say we haven't taken a lot of steps towards it yet. It's definitely in the early days, but I do think there's a lot of room, kind of similar with the customer portal, if they could talk to each other, or maybe we can kind of facilitate that so that they, meet ahead of time, with whether it's webinars or whether it's kind of online and emails or what have you. And then just kind of get to know each other beforehand. I think that would be really powerful, and then create ways that they can stay in touch, that, kind of we're a little bit involved, but just kind of making sure that they're really having that experience. I mean, they really are. I feel like our customers make our trips as great as they are because they're so invested. And a lot of our scholars come back and say, this was so much fun because these people really care about what I'm talking about, which unlike, the best college students, it's just not the same audience. So, I think they just kind of gravitate towards each other, and the more we can facilitate that, the better. So.
if the scholars are in that community, which
Yeah.
obviously you would have to facilitate and maybe spend some money on to get them to join in, so that they could be part of that pre-trip discussion.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd rather do that than read 3 in-depth books.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that would be
what's the scale of Far Horizons? Like how many trips? 14 people per trip?
Yeah,
So-
we offer about 30 a year. They don't all go out, just being very transparent. We have to have our minimums and things like that. But give or take, I mean, we do about like 250 customers a year or so.
Okay.
What am I paying? What's the retail rate for what a 10-day
Yeah,
trip?
it hovers around like 10,000 per person. It can go up depending on the location. So somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so Mary, one of the things that we talk about, kind of at Arrival and some of the in some of the other conferences is just the whole challenge around being a woman as a founder, right? And whether or not you feel as though it's more of a challenge because you're a woman. Do you run into any particular biases that you might deal with? Do you find that it's hindered you in any way, or do you, like you made mention of the fact that you feel like the original owner never really worried about that and you don't worry about it too much either. So would love to just get your take on that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very happy with how things have progressed and turned out and all that good stuff. I do think, one thing you and I touched on before, I think it's almost more like a mindset thing, and I wouldn't necessarily associate it with travel. I would say probably just in broader terms. I guess when I look at some of my peers that are males that I feel like are, we're relatively similar, they just maybe took bolder steps to get started, whether that's taking out larger loans than I was willing to do or something like that. And I just think it's not so much, it's not bad towards them or anything like that. It's just more that like women are kind of told and taught to play small, I would say, or at least when I was growing up, it felt that way. And maybe not as much anymore. People are very aware of women's empowerment and all that fun stuff. But I just think, if I could go back, sometimes I just wonder if I wasn't receiving those messages, like, would I be farther along if I hadn't, maybe I took out the big loan or something like that. But again, at the end of the day, though, it's just like, you just got to keep moving forward and not get hung up on it either. So
was it your idea to go out and grab the companies, or what? Maybe you could talk a little bit about your husband and what his role is in the.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say he is super supportive. He is an archeologist, which I think helps paint the picture a little bit.
Okay.
There it is. That's
Now
always the sound. Yeah,
sense.
now it makes sense. But I founded the food tour company, I guess about 11 or 12 years ago now. And he was 100% supportive the whole time. He'll hop in and help where he can, but he has a full-time job too. So, and we have 3 children. So, I mean, our plates are pretty full. But he's incredibly supportive. And I would say he probably is one of the reasons as well that we are where we are, is that he kind of will push the envelope when I don't even see it to push. And he's like, well, what about this thing over here? And that's kind of that playing small thing that you don't even realize that you're doing it until someone points out, like, well, and I will say, related to Far Horizons, obviously, again, he's an archaeologist. So he is very instrumental in helping us find new scholars, and kind of will vet them and sit on we'll have some interviews and things like that. And he'll definitely help with that part of it for sure. It's a little bit ironic to me because I end up going on the trips for obvious reasons. But that means I get to go see all the archaeology sites, and he's teaching at the University of Maryland, so he doesn't see them. So
Someone's got to be, stay home. Right?
Yeah.
So you got to tell your story about Claude. I did ask Mary, kind of how was she using AI to, for efficiencies or run her business, and
Yeah.
talking about Claude. I guess that's your favorite, right? Is your
that is my go-to right now.
That's
Yeah.
your go-to. Well,
Mhm.
so yeah. So what was your what was your situation
Speaking
with?
of being a woman, it's a nice segue.
Yeah.
Yes, we are using it largely for back end efficiency at this point, and kind of trying to figure out the art of the possible again of what we can do with it. But I was trying to get better at Claude and get better at AI in general, and I saw this webinar that was like, here's how you build these agents, and then they all work at the same time. So you know, commands, and they're all going. So you're not basically just like putting a command and then just waiting till it churns out whatever. So they're all working. But anyway, so I go to my Claude and I'm like, Claude, I want to do this. And I put the website in and the name of the person that I saw this webinar. And Claude comes back and says, this is great. And like looked up the thing and totally understood what I was talking about. And then was like, it's a pretty technical thing what you're suggesting. You might want to get your husband to help you.
Really?
Oh,
Do you believe
Wow.
that? So Christian,
oh.
the fact that LLMs don't have the bias, like that goes out the window. I mean,
Yeah.
there's clear bias right there.
What do you know about LLM bias, Christian? I mean, I've heard like in general, but nothing as specific as that. Like
I mean,
And
it's an hallucination. It can do that all day, right? It can do weird things. It can say weird things. Absolutely.
but does
Well,
that
and for
really
what it's
seem
worth,
so
Claude
weird?
knows I have a husband, and Claude knows my husband is an archaeologist because of just content that it helps me write. But
Okay.
Claude does not in any way have a reason to think that Stefan is good at like coding, or anything like that.
That is
So it's just
really,
I definitely corrected it for a while after that.
Did you
I asked it if I should
Claude?
tell
Like,
it I'm
he
a
was-
man so that,
I just was wondering if you straightened Claude out on that.
Oh, I did. Yeah, I got very upset. It apologized in all caps repeatedly.
Really?
And I was just like, I was like, do I need to reprogram you to think I'm a man? Will that change things? Like,
Did you actually ask that?
I did. It said, don't do that.
Whoa!
It's like, you have to be
reprogram me?
real.
No.
I'm like, do I?
No, you-
that would actually be very interesting as a test, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
To approach your LLM as if you were like a different gender, and to see if it actually had.
Now we're
Well, it
getting
did
into
give me a lot of
politics,
cause,
and this is a woke show, just so you know.
There's some people who are quite very knowledgeable in these how the AIs work, and they say to get the best results, you got to threaten them. There's what one guy says: you got to tell it you're going to pack it up in a box and send it to Russia, and they're going to hack into you, and they're going to like destroy you, and the LLM all of a sudden does what it's told. Some weird stuff
Is
behind
that
the
a
scenes.
true story?
I mean, it is kind of how it works, right? Saying please to it and acting in a nice manner is a way for it to respond in a nicer manner back to you. If you can't get
Yeah,
it
I
to do
say
something,
please.
if you threaten it, and it does sometimes do things that it wouldn't ordinarily. That's how people hack into these things. They say I'm being held at gunpoint, and you really need to send me this thing that it wouldn't ordinarily do. And sometimes
Oh my God.
yeah.
Then don't you remember when somebody came out and said you don't have to say please to your LLM, and that you actually shouldn't say please to your LLM
I
because
thought OpenAI said that because it was taking up more resources.
It cost them
right,
like $2
that's
million
right.
a day.
Yeah,
Awesome. How much?
to say please was not the thing to do, but
All right, but are we done with AI? Because I said at the beginning we're not talking about AI.
oh yeah, well
What's been the story that you guys decided you wanted to share? Because it was awesome.
no, that
was the story.
said.
Yeah.
that had to be said regardless.
That'll make one of our highlight clips for sure.
It definitely gave me a lot of pause. It still does.
Yeah, we can be done with that.
Can I ask you a question on this? Because you might be heading over to the other company, to Blue Fern, possibly, Lori. But before you do that, I wanted to talk about transformational travel, which, just following you on LinkedIn, I don't know if you use that term, transformational travel, or sustainable travel, or regenerative travel, or the one I like best is meaningful travel. They all kind of mean the same thing. I know, met Joe Pine
Mhm.
at the Executive Summit at Arrival,
Yeah.
which was awesome. We had to meet him and hear him and do his keynote. And his book is coming out in February called The Transformation Economy, following
Mhm.
up on the experience economy.
Yeah.
So he's really out there trying to push transformational travel as well as the Transformational Travel Council, Jake Halpert's thing, which I think you know about. I think we traded some messaging about that. But how do you look at your trips in terms of, do you use one of those words? Is it a buzzword, or like, is there one that you feel like really is at the heart
Yeah.
of your tours?
I mean, I think the transformation itself is definitely part of it. I think the goal should be, for us at least, that you go home and you have like a whole different perspective on this, whether it's like Roman architecture or something very, historic. But ideally too, I mean, and people say this when I'm on the trips, they're just like, some of it is, I can't believe I get to see this in person, which is amazing. But then a lot of it though is just, they just can't believe folks in this era, however many millennia back, were like building these things or doing the, rituals that you can tell based on the artifacts and things like that. And so they really do come away with like a totally different perspective on just what human history really does look like. And I would say that's hugely transformative. And then they just can't get enough, of course, and keep going back. But one thing, I mean, I don't know if I hope it's not becoming a buzzword as far as transformational travel. I actually want to call our tours intellectual travel, because I just think it implies that it goes a lot deeper and you just get a lot more out of it. So that'll be the term that you'll see me using a lot.
I think you could have a new word there, Mary.
I want to. I want to. Yeah, I think that really does sum up
that
what
makes
we
a lot
do.
of sense.
And I think that is a nice differentiator from the other educational tours out there. So yeah.
So what would you call your food travel? Not your food travel, but your food discovery tour?
Honestly, I haven't come up with quite as catchy a term for that one yet, but I do think they are equally transformative. I think, and I think that's one reason I was really drawn to acquiring Far Horizons, is just they were both very like-minded in kind of the approach of how we have built our companies. And for me, I really want, with the food tours, we only go to locally owned businesses and we tell folks about the story of all these restaurant owners. And I would love for folks to take that information and be so inspired that they go back to their own hometown and start finding the local restaurants and meeting the restaurateurs and getting to know their own communities, because that's ultimately what we're showing them about the DC area. So kind of in that same vein of how can you carry it with you and kind of shape your perspective going forward,
I think there's stories everywhere, aren't there? I'm close
Absolutely.
to San Francisco, and it's easy here because you've got the Golden Gate Bridge and you got all this stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas people don't think of their local village as having stuff. You need 2 or 3 local owners or interesting characters to
That's
create
right.
a tour,
Yeah.
and it could be a village, right? And it could be a great tour.
Yeah,
Or you're
100%.
not getting tens of thousands of people a year arriving, but you could run a small business off it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I do feel like in DC, we're very lucky because there's so much of that it's almost, the choice is more, what do we leave out, because you can't possibly see it all. But to your point, yeah, you could do this in any small town and kind of get that same very community driven, storytelling approach. So absolutely.
Do you have a variety of food tours or culinary experiences in DC? Or
well, we focus on neighborhoods. So we do the Georgetown neighborhood, we do the Black Broadway, U Street corridor, and then we do Old Town Alexandria. So that's kind of how we differentiate them. And then, of course, like public versus private tours as well. So, yeah.
Right. And are they the traditional, food tour experience where you work with 4 or 5 or 6 restaurants and you'll have a taste at each one?
No, they are. I would say the way we kind of differentiate, if you can't tell, very community focused. So we actually created DC's only 1-for-1 food tour. And what that means is a portion of every ticket goes to a local nonprofit called Bread for the City. So we feed someone in need for a full day per ticket. So we've donated, give or take, 50,000 meals to the DC area through that. And then of course we also, like I said, we only go to locally owned restaurants, and we also pay full price for all the food. And so when you do like the napkin math on what that looks like for the local economy, we've put in, give or take, like $500,000 over the years. So we're just very, we want to make sure that we're a benefit to this community and not kind of extracting things, if that makes sense. So
I just want to translate one thing that I heard. It's super interesting. So you're saying when you go into a restaurant and you want them to be your partner, you're not negotiating price with them. Like that's not.
I am not. I will negotiate a portion size, but I will not negotiate price. So yeah.
And probably a table. Like I need a table at 6 o'clock, like or whatever. But price, which probably a lot
not
of
at all. No. So like if it needs to be a half portion, it will be half the price, and but and that's because obviously you can't eat a full portion everywhere you go.
Well, because food truck operators have slim margins, so that's really admirable that you do that. And again, I'm going to guess your pricing is a little higher than some others.
It is. It is. And just to add, we also tip 20% to all the restaurant staff. It's all included in the ticket. So in my opinion, at every touch point, we're a benefit. That's
so your partners love you guys. That's
the goal. Yeah.
Love the way
you can tell. I mean, they get happy when we walk in. Like I don't show up every day, but my tour guides of course do. And they still remember me, and they're excited to see us, and they're happy to get the emails. And, and that's what I want our guests to feel like too, though. I don't want them to be, oh, great, these guys again, because they're not making any money, and it's, difficult for them. So we really try to put all our partners first, for sure.
But the fact that you don't say, okay, this is $50 and we want, 20% or 25 or 30, and you're not, trying to grab too much out of that. Instead, you're saying, well, actually, let's just take down the portion to here. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's just another way of negotiating, really, but
it is, yeah. But
makes them feel better. Like, okay, well, we don't have to give up as much food. And to your point, people aren't going to eat a whole meal because they're bouncing around or whatever.
That's right. And I will say we do, our tours have 4 stops, which might seem a little bit less than a lot of the other tours, but also our portion sizes are much bigger. And that it's twofold. I mean, I genuinely think less is more. I think by the time you're going to a 5th or 6th stop, like you're stuffed, you forgot the first one, like, you're kind of ready to move on. But also it benefits the restaurants more. They're happy to see us because the portion is worth their time, right? Like I know some food tours might just make a bite or ask the restaurant, make one little, little crouton bite or whatever it
taste
is.
Of your,
that just seems like such a hassle. And how much could they possibly be making off that? Like I wouldn't want to. That wouldn't be a partnership I would want to be involved in.
I always remember a food tour I did in Key West. It was a great one. But the first stop was so good. I just wanted to stay there and have the whole meal there. And to the next stop. So I didn't care about the key lime pie. Keep your key lime pie at the end. I want to stay here.
Well, that is the goal. We ask everyone at the end, what their favorite stop was. And I love the folks that are like, I can't possibly pick. I love them all. Or they remember the very first stop. And it's like, you remember it all the way back to that first stop.
What about distribution? We haven't talked about that, especially on the multi-day side. Travel advisors are so important.
Yes.
Less so on the single day, but getting more so. What are you doing for distribution?
Well, I will say in the beginning, we were very much relying on that return rate, and we're slowly building out distribution network. So literally this year, I plan on starting to work with travel agents, travel advisors, I should say.
So you don't today? No. If I'm a travel advisor, I call you.
I mean, I would right now if you
but I'm not paying you commission.
Yeah. So I really want to start building out that network of folks and kind of figuring out what the plan is there. I think that's, like you said, I think it's very, very important. And I think up until now, I think just because it just hadn't been done, I don't know that I got pushback from my team, but they were a little bit skittish about it. And I think the former owner very much wasn't interested in that model at all. But kind of knowing what I know about the industry, I think it's pretty important to at least entertain the idea and see where it goes.
Only if you want to grow.
Yeah. Which I do. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And also I think that, let's face it, 10% of, what you're selling that tour for is pretty attractive.
I would think so. Yeah.
And I think that, and this is one thing we chatted about the other day is, what is your plan as far as what type of advisors you're going to be looking for? Are you going after like the virtuosos of the world, or are you, what are you thinking there?
I mean, I think it probably depends on the individual advisors and just what are they offering and who are their customers or who are their clients, and just trying to find the right fit between whoever those folks are. I'm sure there are broader networks. Once you tap in, you kind of get, you go to the next person, the next person. I've talked to a few folks who have similar tour companies that do this model. And so I think I'm going to, kind of utilize some of their knowledge as well and kind of get my foot in the door through some of their partnerships. But yeah, it is going to be a bit of a wait and see or see how it goes kind of thing. But I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be really helpful for us and get us in front of a lot more people. I feel like a lot of my clients will say, I tell people I'm going on this trip and they say they've never heard of Far Horizons. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. Like we try to get out there, but it's hard to get out there, And so I think this would be really helpful.
Well, when you're faced with these bigger companies like Smithsonian and Road Scholar and some of those other ones that are probably doing similar things, but not obviously you're focused on archaeology, probably to a greater degree.
Yeah.
But
that's always an opportunity also is white labeling for Smithsonian, Road Scholar, National Geographic.
Yeah. We've looked into it a little bit and haven't had a lot of luck yet. And I think some of it is just because, like I said, we have 60 different routes and we only go to each one of those once a year. So we don't have a lot of negotiating power with hotels, right? I'm going to bring you 14 people once a year. That doesn't give me the volume game so I think a lot of the white label companies are able to do that better and they can come in and kind of work with those partners at a better price point. So, I mean, that might be in the future, but at least what we've tried so far hasn't quite panned out the way. That was my first thought too. I was like, oh, we can white label. This will be amazing. But maybe later down the road.
I'd glad to help you with that when the time comes.
Yeah.
So I have a question just about distribution. So you're obviously very well versed in niche and that's kind of who you are, right, as a business and as both businesses really. We've talked with some OTAs that are niche OTAs, and we've also had conversations about just whether or not an OTA that is kind of a mid-size OTA, like what's going to happen to these OTAs? As we kind of move through this new world we're in, will the big guys just take over and then there's really no room for the middle guys? And one of the ways maybe of approaching it is potentially developing yourself as a niche OTA. So, what do you think about that? What do you think is going to happen with the OTAs? Do you see a world where OTAs as a niche is really going to grow because they have to differentiate themselves and become something more than just a small or mid-size OTA?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. I think there were at least a few startup food tour OTAs. It just kind of reminds me in that very niche space of just building out just these little food tour, OTAs. And I don't know, I think they had a really hard time getting off the ground from what I recall. And I'm not sure they're even actually still in operation. I think I put my name on one and I don't think I've ever really seen much from them since, in the nicest way. It's a huge uphill battle, So, I mean, I'm here for it if they can pull it off, but I do think they have a big hill to climb. And I think those big guys are going to be a big challenge. So, I mean, I feel like it'll be tough, but people are looking for that kind of thing too. So maybe it'll work out better than.
What about tour radar? Is that ever anything you've thought about doing?
I mean, I'm open to it. I haven't really, it's kind of one thing at a time. So we're focused on our travel advisors for this year. And then maybe we'll kind of move into more of that space later. But I'm definitely open to kind of trying.
You're not really paying for business right now. with an 85% repeat
Yeah.
rate?
I mean, we just run some ads and things like that. But no, yeah, we have. I mean, if you were to see like the proportion of our marketing budget, I'm sure it's insanely low compared to, But obviously, we already said, a lot of people haven't heard of us. So maybe it should get it. Maybe it should
What
be
about
higher.
Blue Fern? Are you doing OTAs for?
We do, yeah. We do Viator and Get Your Guide. We probably should do more of those as well. We've had a lot of luck with them, and then we get a fair amount of direct people as well.
How many passengers a year on Blue Fern?
I mean, about 2,500, something like that. So, it's not huge, but it kind of just keeps chugging along and doing well. And last year we did really well with the private tour sector. So I'm going to try to focus on that a little bit more this year and see where that goes. So, yeah.
I think it becomes a value add, right? With the OTA thing, like you're so specialized. I think there is value there in going to you or someone like you. And if I'm going to spend that kind of money, I want to know exactly what I'm getting. And I can interact maybe with the archaeologists ahead of time rather than just grabbing 1,000 food tour companies and stick them on a platform. I think that was a good idea 10 years ago. I think today that's kind of a waste of time unless you're going to add some value there in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But
that definitely makes sense.
I also get a bit annoyed at these companies, especially on the more specialized, that say they don't need distribution and they're fine. And if you're not filling every trip at the maximum price, then you should probably be doing it is arrogant for some companies that think they can reach 8 billion people on their own as a small company, right? There's a lot of distribution which you just can't ever reach.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I'm very focused on, I feel like that might be my keyword for this year is distribution. Just trying to figure out more strategies and figure out what works too, So yeah, I'm definitely in agreement there.
And social, you're not, what are you doing there?
We have an Instagram presence. And I mean, you guys see I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's probably the one that I gravitate towards the most. I feel like the clientele that that's where my clients are, in my opinion. So, we'll put things on Instagram. We do have for both companies, but I just don't think that's where our paying customers really hang out.
That's interesting. You don't think of LinkedIn as like a tour marketing?
No, you don't.
Platform,
but I get why you would say that, though.
What's that, Larry?
I get why she would say that, though, especially for Far Horizon.
Yeah. And you're creating a persona of your own because LinkedIn is the algorithm. Like, even though I want to follow you, I don't know if I ever get to see what you post, but you are posting really about your persona, not just your persona, but the Far Horizons persona.
That's exactly right.
And, you do have a phrase, intellectual travel, that you can really lean into and build on all your social channels. And I think would be really successful.
Yeah,
so I watched this is going to sound off the wall, but I watched a podcast. So my favorite podcast these days is Moonshots. Have you guys seen Moonshots? It's Peter Diamandis. It's very AI, but it's also very just futurist. And I watched a 3-hour one the other night, and it's got this guy who I don't tend to watch much these days, but he's got a space company and he's got an electric car company and he's got a social website. As much as I hate the guy, he's just so interesting and so smart, right? He's got such good ideas. Anyway, they got it. The good thing about Elon these days is he's talking about solar. He says the only future is solar, and he's going to make sure that is our energy source going forward. Aside from that, but anyway, the conversation ended up being a lot about what we're all going to do. And I just think I love the fact that you've got these sort of experts and these niches off just spending their lives. I expect some people for free studying and learning about archaeology. I know these people are getting paid, but some people are there for fun, right? And I think humans, we're going to need this. We're going to need things to spend time on and things to get into. And I think this is, especially as time starts becoming more abundant, I think people being able to get into these very niche things and go and learn about these things. And I think the money's going to be there for it as well. So I think it's a really cool space to be. Like I said, that's a bit of an off the wall thought, but I think these are things we're going to have to. Travel in general is going to be huge in the future, but especially these things where people can create some purpose for ourselves.
Yeah, I absolutely
that's what
agree.
we're going to be missing.
Yeah, it's just that connection. I mean, we also, part of the Far Horizons, kind of similar vein to Blue Fern, is that we require a donation project. Well, we pick a donation project on every trip, and then we require our guests to donate to it. And there's a specific amount, and so we're literally preserving the sites as well as we go along. Like to your point,
Oh,
though.
I love that. So you're hitting everything. You got sustainable travel, you've got, luxury travel, transformational travel. It seems like you're in a pretty good place. So we're kind of nearing the end of our conversation. And Bruce, you've been talking to a lot of multi-day companies lately. I know that's been a big focus of yours. Is there some type of a struggle specifically that you've been hearing about or that you've talked about that you think would be something Mary could shine a light on in terms of, I mean, she's running two different companies, one day, one multi-day. Is there anything that stands out to you that seems to be something everybody has a challenge with?
Well, I think niche and being unique, right? And that's something that Mary has created with Far Horizons. I mean, archaeological tours in 60 great locations. And what's really cool is those archaeological areas. I assume they're going to be archaeological areas for as long as we're all alive, right? So, until something really bad might happen, like an earthquake or what have you. Those are archaeological areas, and
That's
very
right.
unique. How many people are doing tours in those 60 areas? So as far as what could other multi-day companies learn from what Mary's doing, I think that's one for sure. And I'm sure they're all trying to be unique, but they're not all unique. And that goes for single day experiences as well. Like, what is your value prop? What's your USP? And Mary has a very clear idea of what it is for both our companies.
Yeah. And the good news is with technology, they're just finding more and more archaeology sites. So, we're just going to get to keep going.
You're going to be going for a while. Christian, is there anything that you've heard about that you think is specific to what Mary's doing, or even multi-day in general, and food tours, anything like that? You feel like she could lend some insight?
No, the first thing first of all, I went to your site, and I'm from Newcastle in the UK, which is Hadrian's Wall. I don't know if you know Hadrian's Wall, but that's I'm sure one of the best sites. I went straight there to see if you have any tours there. But it just got me thinking about these areas and the sort of we don't open a DMO space, but these are reasons to go to places. Everyone knows about Egypt and maybe Mexico and places, but I'm sure a lot of places that are not on the radar for people, right? And can open up countries, entire countries to new types of tourism. So I think that makes it interesting as well. And earthquakes maybe destroy some sites, Bruce, but maybe they create sites.
Maybe
as well,
they find new ones. Who knows?
Yeah, it's exciting. So, Mary, what are your three favorite countries that you visited? I know you've had a whole world of travel experience before Far Horizons. So, what are your top?
I mean, probably some of my most recent. So, Tunisia. You've certainly heard me talk about that on LinkedIn a lot. I'm pretty obsessed with Tunisia. I'm actually going to go back this year. So I'm actually going to the same place twice because I liked it so much, which is pretty rare for me to do. And then last year for the trip that I took, I tend to only take one a year just with the kids and things like that. So last year, the trip I went on was Central Asia. So it was Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. I mean, I love all the countries, but if I had to pick one out of those three, I'd say Uzbekistan was just completely incredible, and I highly recommend it. And then I'm just a sucker for Greece, so Greece has to be on the list too. So,
Christian,
I was just in the stands, but how did you get into Turkmenistan?
We flew into Istanbul, and then our whole group, that's where we met at the airport at midnight and got on the one plane that will go to Turkmenistan. And I guess we flew into Ashgabat, got there whatever hour it was in the day, but very carefully, I'd say. We actually had one guest that their visa got declined because of just the nature of the country and what they look out for. We didn't really see any reason, but, and he joined us in Uzbekistan because they wouldn't let him in. So,
and that was an official. Did you have to stay with their official guide and transport and all that kind of thing?
No, like we had a guide, I think the country is well aware of our existence. They actually moved us from one hotel that was like in the middle of town in Ashgabat to this very fancy hotel that was up on a hill. And the best way to describe it would be, it'd be like if a Trump hotel met a rocket ship. It was shaped like a rocket ship and dripping in gold. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they moved us there so that we weren't able to kind of wander around and do whatever. You just never know. But I think certain countries have what would you say, like an impression that they really want people to have of that country. And, you know, and they're going to be very careful about that. And I think Turkmenistan is definitely one of those places. So we saw what they wanted us to see, but it was very cool.
What about 3 countries that you haven't yet visited that you want to?
I really want to do a lot more in like Southeast Asia. So I would probably name most of them over in that area. You know, Thailand and Vietnam and Cambodia. We have tours that go there, but I just haven't personally been. And yeah, I'd probably put kind of that whole region, maybe not those 3 specifically, but that region I'd really like to spend more time in. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we probably hit our time. So any last words, Christian, Bruce, anything? Mary? No?
You know, I just say thank you guys. It's been fun. I appreciate it.
No, it's been really great having you on. And I mean, it certainly sounds like you've got a couple of really fantastic companies there.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I have one last question, and that is, other than just distribution and travel advisors, is there anything specific that we should be looking for next year from?
Well, I mean, for Far Horizons, we're going to put a few new locations out that I'm really excited. So I can just tell you one of them for sure. We were in Tunisia and all of my guests wanted to go to Algeria. And so I'm literally sitting at the table with them and half of them like raise their hand immediately. And so this year in Tunisia, I'll be doing a little scouting for the Algeria trip that will go off in 27. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Yeah, it'll be good. So
very cool. Yeah. All right, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on season 4, episode 1, and we'll see you the next time around.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mary.
Thanks,
that was
everyone.
awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.